everyone. Welcome to 2022's Community Art Academy. We are so happy to bring you another year of a partnership between Memphis Public Library and the University of Memphis's Art Education Department to bring you virtual art lessons. This week, we're going to be learning about drawing animals from objects, and our book is going to be No Such Things by Bill Peet. The blue-snouted thwumps feed entirely on weeds, and along with the weeds, they swallow the seeds. Eating seeds causes weeds to sprout on their backs. They look very much like walking haystacks. When a mother thwump has young ones to raise, her weed-covered back is where they all graze. Of all the odd creatures, you won't find another who supports its young as both fodder and mother. The glubzumps who resemble old sunken logs keep a hungry eye out for plump, juicy frogs. Since old sunken logs are where frogs like to hide, when they spy a glubzump, they go swimming inside. But glubzumps are slow-witted and not at all clever, and to shut their big mouths takes them almost forever. By then all the frogs, I am happy to say, have made their escape and are swimming away. The golden brown-crested, pie-faced pazeeks have huge appetites to match their big beaks. And their three-toed, unusual, pitchfork-like feet are perfect for picking the cherries they eat. To make sure everyone in the flock gets his share, there's a strict pecking order to keep it all fair. This means that the smaller ones stay in their places till the bigger pazeeks are done filling their faces. The common big-wig-tailed mock-woggins have no hair at all on their noggins. That's the main reason why they're so sheepish and shy, and also the reason they are crafty and sly. They hide their bare heads in a very strange way by using their tails as a perfect toupee. And no one would guess that their noggins were hairless if the sheepish mock-woggins were not sometimes careless. It's no fun for the flumpers to crawl on the ground, so they coil themselves up to be perfectly round. Then they go for a spin, a wild whirling ride, far out in the hilly, broad countryside. After so many miles of rolling around, they discover their rubbery hides have worn out. Since they can't be retreaded once they go flat, there is nothing the flumpers can do after that. The juggerums have a most impolite way of overpowering their high-flying prey. They use their strong breath, one potent kerpuff, to stun dragonflies if they fly close enough. Then the dragonflies drop as if someone had shot them, with no idea of just what could have got them. Then cross-eyed and dizzy down the flies come to end up inside of the old juggerum. The spooky-tailed Tizzy has a brain that's so small. She forgets everything in just no time at all. That's why her own tail is a shocking surprise with its ferocious jaws and enormous red eyes. One glimpse of the thing and she lets out a shriek, flies into a tizzy and takes off like a streak. She runs on for miles just screaming in terror before she discovers her horrible error. The reason the flubduds all sigh in despair, they stand on their own feet and they can't go anywhere. Since they're much too befuddled to figure things out, They're stuck in one spot and can't move about. It's always will be quiet a while between feasts for these awkward, dim-witted, grass-eating beasts. And they won't get one nibble, not one bite to eat, till the prairie grass grows almost up to their feet. The great gugaloops with their yawning fish faces live deep in the sea in the gloomiest of places. And since they're so long and completely strung out, they lose track of themselves while they're swimming about. When they catch a sardine, more often than not, it turns out to be their own tail that they've got. So they don't dare trust or believe their own eyes for fear that they might catch themselves by surprise. If the fancy fandangos seem stuck up and snooty, it's mostly because of their exquisite beauty. They're most often seen with smug, smiling faces by a crystal clear pond in a jungle oasis. There they linger for hours with nothing to do but sip the sweet water and admire the view. And the view they admire, as you might well suppose, is their own reflection right under their nose. The grabnabbits are odd undersea growth, not plants nor animals, but mixtures of both. These creatures catch fish, but they never eat one. They do not have gullets, so they catch them for fun. To them, a codfish is just something to tease, to grab by the tail, to pinch, or to squeeze. But the poor frightened fish cannot possibly know that they will not be eaten until they're let go. The sly, snickering snoof lives up where it snows. He always leaves tracks wherever he goes. He runs to the west, this wrong-footed beast, leaves a trail of huge bear tracks that seem to go east. When hunters discover the trail of the brute, they suppose it's a bear and get ready to shoot. They never suspect that they've been led astray by a creature whose feet go the opposite way. The pin-headed mogawak, who towers up to the sky, has a bird's eye view even though he can't fly. And since his beak is so amazingly small, he must feed on the tiniest creatures that crawl. And with so much frenzied pecking to do, he sees things more often from a worm's eye view. With his beak an inch or two from the ground, he peeks into crannies where bugs can be found. The skis-a-boo's skis are completely self-grown. You might say these skiers ski on their own. Kerswoosh! They take off in a smooth, easy glide aboard their big horns down a steep mountain slide. The skis-a-boos could have a wonderful time if the return trip weren't such a torturous climb. When the horns hook on snags and keep bumping their knees, they wish they weren't quite so attached to their skis. When the flummox goes fishing, he doesn't need bait. All he needs is the patience to sit still and wait. First, he picks out a spot where it's shady and cool, and he lets his long beard flow down into the pool. Then deep in his gullet, the foxy old flummox makes a sound just like water running over the rocks. Soon the fish come leaping up the fake waterfall, then glug-loop, the sly flummox swallows them all. The end.
Hi, I'm Christy.
And I'm Pox.
We're from the University of Memphis Art Education Department.
And today we're going to be creating and drawing our very own animals inspired by everyday objects. With this lesson, we hope to bring awareness to environmental issues like pollution and endangered animals, and also learn a little bit of Spanish to bring some inclusion to the Hispanic and Latino community.
To do this activity, we'll need pencils, colored pencils, oil pastels, white paper, construction paper, scissors, erasers, markers, paintbrushes, containers for water. That's it.
And now in Spanish, para hacer esta actividad vamos a necesitar lápices, lápices de colores, pasteles de óleo, papel blanco, papel de colores, borradores, acuarelas, brochas para pintar, contenedores para el agua y unos marcadores. For your water container, we would like to encourage you to use something like a mayo jar or a peanut butter jar, anything that you might have left over that you could recycle. It might even be a peach cup. For mine, I'm going to be using a mayo jar just because I like the way it like seals. It's like sturdy and you can just like keep your water in a safe place. And the reason why you want to do this is because like that way you can like recycle items and like don't have to throw it away. It's like a waste and these are just perfectly usable. So might as well keep them around. Now before we start drawing our own unique animals, Christy will be showing you a little bit about an artist and an author that you might know quite well.
That's right, the artist is Dr. Seuss. His art style and techniques are very similar to the art of Bill P. in the book No Such Things that was read earlier in the program. Theo Gizzo, also known as Dr. Seuss, was born in Springfield, Massachusetts in 1904. Bill P's creatures in No Such Things have been compared to Dr. Seuss's characters, and he was probably inspired by the art of the times as well as the creative process that Dr. Seuss created in his books. Bill P was known for doing his illustrations in colored pencils and ink. Dr. Seuss was known to do his illustrations in watercolor and ink as well. Even though both artists had different mediums that they were using, they had very similar styles in the way that they created their motions through line, value, texture, and you can see that representing in the slides as well as far as the motion. They used all the same techniques, they just used different mediums.
And now that we know a little bit more about these artist techniques, we will try to be using these techniques as well in our own artwork while we create our very own animals. We will be using the art elements of design to help us create our artwork and understand the way we do it better. The 7 elements of our design are line, línea, value, valor, shape, figura, color, color, space, espacio, texture, textura, and form, forma.
Be listening out for these elements of design as we do our demonstrations of our drawings. To do this activity, think about an object that you use every day, like a toothbrush, a mug, or shoes.
Or a water bottle. Try to think of things that you might throw away pretty often.
Yes, this is very important to consider, to actually use these items to keep from having to throw them away, to be able to recycle them. But once you have actually picked out your objects, we can encourage you to do a bit of research on the animals that are in danger or becoming extinct.
We did include a QR code that you can scan with your phone camera, or you can type in the URL to visit the website with the list of endangered animals.
If you don't have access to this option, you can always choose an animal off the video references of the animal slides.
To begin, you will grab a sheet of paper, preferably a white one, and with a pencil, it can be of any kind, you will want to start drawing out the basic shapes of the form of the body of the animal or object you are drawing. I chose to use a pair of scissors, so I brought some with me, and I'm going to be using these as a reference. I will start by doing some basic shapes of the form of the scissors to create the object I'm drawing. I'm going to start by doing like these 2 ovalish shapes and some triangle figures. Then I'm going to start to sketch out more basic shapes to complete the animal's body. I'm going to do a larger oval right here, and sort of like a curvy line. I'm doing a whooping crane, which is an endangered species that lives in wetlands and marshes. After you're done drawing out the body, you can start by adding darker lines. And then erase the lines you don't need anymore to bring out the form of the animal to make it stand out more clearly. Once this is taken care of, we can now start coloring in our animals. Also, this will sound strange, but please do not chew on the pencils or eat the pencil shavings, as this can be really bad for you. For my drawing, I'm choosing to use a mixture of colored pencils, oil pastels, and watercolors to bring out different effects. But you are free to use whatever materials you want to use and however you want, of course. Just be sure to use the colored pencils first, because the wax of the colored pencils and the oil pastels are not going to go along very well. So it'll just always be a better option to use the colored pencils first before any other material. I'm gonna take my red colored pencils and start coloring the top of the bird's scissor head to match the red feathers of the whooping bird. You want to start by coloring it in really lightly and then go darker along the edges where the pencil marks are. Doing this will add a value to the drawing and create the impression of space. Normally I would do this throughout the whole body, but because whooping birds are white, I'm just going to do this with my pencil.
Use colored pencils, be very careful using your colored pencils, especially when you're using your sharpeners. As well as when you're moving around, you don't want to wave your pencils around and hurt anybody in the process. And when you're doing your pencil sharpening, you want to dispose of any shavings into the garbage can to keep your area clean.
Since I won't be going to add colors into the whooping bird's body, I'll be using the watercolors to paint the background instead.
Before we start doing our backgrounds, we want to share some more examples of the steps you can take to create additional characters. I chose to do a cat and a dog since they are the animals that you might be more familiar with. I turned the cat into a bowling pin and the dog into a fluffy head bowling ball. As you can see, I also sketched out some basic shapes to make the form of a bowling pin, cat, and a bowling ball dog, then outlined it and added details. I made a story for my cat and dog, actually. When I was doing this, I figured I needed to get them to interact together to make it like a comic strip. So I made a bowling pin cat and a bowling ball dog where the dog's head was made out of a bowling ball. So the interaction that they actually would have is that the little poodle was named Strike and the cat was named Split. Strike kept trying to roll over into a ball and knock over the cat, being mean, but eventually he realized that his fluffy, soft hair was not going to knock her over. Well, the cat thought he was playing, so they became fast friends, and they found themselves rolling around in the hallway, playing in the hallway. So that was like a story that I made up for my characters, and I encourage you to actually do the same thing, just like in the book that was read earlier today. The nice part about making a story for your characters is that you can make a comic strip, as I said before, and continue to grow new ideas from your drawings. As well as now you have drawn your characters, you can go back into your backgrounds. Go back and see if there's any steps you might have missed during the process. You can also go back and recall anything that we taught you during the lesson about the elements of design and then primary and secondary colors. In my drawing, I'm going to use the color green. I'm going to start on the edges, and I'm going to do an up and down motion. Doing up and down motion creates less of a distraction on your object. I'm going to start out with yellow first with my lighter color, and then add blue to make green. Starting out with the lighter color will make it easier for you to control the shade of blue or green that you would like to use. And for my drawing, I'm not going to color the entire picture. I'm just going to do a circular pattern around the cat. I'm going to leave room to put the name on the bottom of the cat, which is named Split. Now the next color I'm going to use is blue to make my green. And again, I'm going to start at the edge first and then work my way out with the color. You can press harder if you want a darker color for the green. I'm going to do mine a little bit lighter. And if you don't want to do a solid background, you can create strokes with your colored pencil to make a texture, which gives it a little bit more play in the background. And if you go inside the lines, it's okay. I'm going to leave a little yellow in the background just to show variations of colors. And now that I'm done, I'm going to take a marker or a Sharpie and write the name of the character right underneath here. And that's it. Your primary colors are red, yellow, and blue.
Rojo, amarillo, y azul.
And depending on which colors you mix here, 1 and 2 will make orange, green, and purple.
Naranja, verde, y morado. Now that we know a little bit more about the primary and secondary colors, we can go back to decorating our backgrounds. For those of you who don't already know, whooping cranes live in marshes and wetlands, which are places that generally have lots of tall grass. They are losing their habitat due to climate change and increased human populations. So for my drawing, I'm going to recreate the wetlands where the whooping crane would normally live. I'm going to grab my watercolor palette and I'm going to apply a little bit of water onto my brush and go on to color green, some more water, and just pull it on the palette onto the side. I'm trying to get more of a yellow-green type of color, so I'm going to dip it into the yellow one. And then in a circular motion, I'm going to mix them both together on the palette. Add lots of water just to make sure it stays fresh. Once you have the color you want, you can take your wet color and start applying it onto the paper. And to do this, it's really simple. You just grab your brush and do some quick strokes here and there. It doesn't matter what direction they go into because grass does this. And it's okay if it has different sizes because this will make the piece look interesting and it'll add dimension to the piece. If you want a different shade of green, you can always mix your primary colors, yellow and blue, to create a different shade of green. I'm also going to paint a blue sky. So I'm going to grab my blue paint and onto one of the little sections on the paint palette, I'm going to apply the blue color. Add lots of water to it to make it really light. And start applying it onto the paper. Okay, now that our sheet of paper is dry, we can start adding in any final details that you need to add. I'm going to go back in and add some oil pastels. I'm going to grab my dark green, light green, and yellow to create different types of like shades of green and add more values into my piece. I want to use a marker to outline my bird and then add lines to the outer edges of the animal just to make it stand out more. I find that using other colors besides black makes the piece look more vibrant, but you're free to use whatever color you like. Be sure to always use the markers first before doing this step because it won't mix very well with the oil pastels. If you try to use the markers after using the oil pastels, your markers will go bad. Okay, so now we are finished. This is what ours look like.
Yours might look completely different than ours, but you'll probably be using different objects and different animals as well. This will be a good time to go back and look at the video and see any elements of design you might have seen in your own work, as well as ours, or look at some other animal endangered species that you may have missed before.
So now we're going to start cleaning our supplies. If you used watercolors today, you're going to want to throw away your paint and water into the sink, or you're going to want to throw it outside where the plants can benefit from the water. Watercolors are non-toxic, mostly made from plant-based binders and pigments, so if your plants take it in, they'll be completely fine.
You also want to take your colored pencils and put them away in storage containers, so to keep those away from pets or your younger siblings. We hope you enjoyed today. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you had fun.